The desert stretched forever, a sea of gold and fire beneath a sky so pale it almost looked white. Heat shimmered in waves, making the horizon dance like water that wasn't there. Out of that endless emptiness came a sound, metal groaning, glass shattering, and a body gasping for air. A woman dragged herself from the broken hull of a half-buried ship, her hands raw and bloody as she pulled across sharp metal scraps. Her lungs burned, every breath filled with dust, and when she finally rolled onto the sand, the sun stabbed into her eyes like knives. She squinted, coughed, and tried to stand, but her knees gave way and she fell again. Round her the ships. Wreckage smoldered, smoke rising into the dry air like a signal no one would ever see. Her name was Kara. She had been on a transport vessel bound for a deep space colony. Not now. That felt like a lifetime ago. All she remembered was the screaming alarms, the violent shake of the hull, and the sound of tearing metal before the world had gone black. Now she was here, on a dead world, with no water, no shade, and no idea if anyone else had survived. It staggered to her feet and looked around, squinting through the brightness, searching for movement. For a long moment there was nothing but sand and the ruins of her ship. Then she froze. Not far away, across a dune, another wreck lay broken in. The sand, its hull was jagged, its shape strange, not human-made. It was larger than her transport, dark and twisted, as if torn apart mid-air before slamming into the desert. Kara's breath caught. She wasn't alone. Someone or something else had fallen from the sky. She crouched low, instinct telling her not to be seen. She scanned the wreck with wide eyes, every muscle tense. The desert was silent, but silence could mean anything. Slowly, carefully, she began to move along the dune, trying to keep her distance, but also desperate to know. When she reached the crest, her stomach tightened. Figure was moving near the alien wreck, tall, hunched, and not human. Its skin glimmered faintly in the sunlight, scales or armor catching the light. It dragged itself from the wreck just as she had blood dark against its strange body. Stumbled, fell, then rose again. Even from this distance, she could see the struggle in its movement. Kara's heart pounded. Fear rushed through her veins, but so did something else. Recognition. This was a survivor, just like her. Not human, but alive. She pressed her back to the sand, fighting the urge to run. Every story she'd ever heard about alien encounters came back to her. Some were peaceful, most were not. She glanced back at her broken ship. There was no water, no food, no radio, nothing that could save her. Survival meant moving forward, not hiding, but forward meant stepping into the unknown. The alien stumbled again, collapsing to its knees in the sand. Kara's breath came quick and shallow. She should stay hidden. She should let it die. It wasn't her problem. But as she watched it struggle, something twisted in her chest. It was the same pain she felt in her own body, the same desperate fight to live. Against every instinct screaming inside her, Kara pushed herself up and slid down the dune. The alien lifted its head when she approached. Its eyes were dark, unreadable, and its chest rose and fell in ragged gasps. It tensed, and she saw a flash of metal in its hands, some kind of blade. Kara froze, raising her hands slowly. She forced herself to speak, even though she knew it. Wouldn't understand. "I'm not here to hurt you," she said, her voice hoarse. I just... The words dried in her throat. What could she say? That they were both stranded. That if they didn't help each other, they'd die. The alien's blade trembled in its grip, then slowly lowered. It was weak to fight. Still watching her, it collapsed onto the sand again. Kara stood over it, her chest tight, sun burning hotter on her skin. This was madness. She was alone, on a desert world, standing next to an alien she didn't understand. Yet for the first time since waking up, she didn't feel completely alone. The silence of the desert pressed in on them both, heavy and suffocating, as if the planet itself was waiting to see what would happen next. Far in the distance, the sand shifted. A ripple moved across the dunes, slow and steady, like something huge was moving beneath the surface. Kara's blood ran cold. The planet was not as lifeless as it looked. She crouched beside the alien, her voice trembling as she whispered words she wasn't sure it could hear. "We have to move." But the alien didn't answer. Its breathing was shallow, its eyes closing as if sleep was pulling it down. Kara looked back at the horizon. The ripple was gone. The desert was silent again, too silent. She felt a chill crawl down her spine despite the heat. Whatever was under the sand had noticed them. Kara's heart pounded harder. She didn't know what this world was or why fate had dropped her here. But she knew one thing. Being alone wasn't an option anymore. Whether she trusted the alien or not, whether it trusted her or not, their lives were tied together now. The desert would swallow them both if they didn't act fast. She pressed her hands to the alien's arm and tried to pull. "Come on," she whispered. "We can't stay here." The alien's eyes opened just enough to lock onto hers. For a moment, the distance between them, the gulf of species, language, history, meant nothing. They were both survivors, and something beneath. The sand was coming closer. The sun hung high and merciless in the pale sky, pressing down on Kara with a weight that seemed to push the breath out of her chest. Every step she took sank into the burning sand, making it harder to drag the alien's body forward. It was not crushing, but it was awkward, heavy enough that her arms and back screamed with every pull. She had looped its arm over her shoulder, its scaled skin rough and hot against her own, and forced herself to keep moving, one slow step at a time. She didn't know where she was going. There was no landmark, no shade, no sign of water. Sand. But she knew she had to get them away from the wrecks, away from that shifting ripple she had seen earlier. The alien's breathing rattled in her ear, shallow and uneven. Its head lolled against her shoulder, its dark eyes flickering open and shut. Kara risked a glance down at its side. Blood seeped from a deep gash that tore across its chest and ribs, the wound glistening and raw. She swallowed hard. The desert would kill them both soon enough without water, but if he bled out before then, she would truly be alone. That thought made her push harder, her legs trembling as she dragged him further from the dunes. The ground shifted behind them, a low rumbling. Hiss rose out of the sand, like something enormous exhaling beneath the surface. Kara froze, every muscle tight, her heart thundering in her chest. She turned her head slowly, scanning the dune they had just crossed. Nothing moved. The sand lay still, glittering under the sun, but her skin prickled with cold dread. Something was watching. Something buried in the endless desert. She clenched her jaw, adjusted her grip on the alien, and kept moving. Minutes felt like hours. The silence pressed heavy around her, broken only by her ragged breaths and the weak gasps of her companion. Finally, she spotted something jutting out of the sand ahead. At first she thought it was another piece of wreckage, but as she neared, she realized it was the broken frame of a structure, old and crumbling. A ruin. Its walls had half collapsed, stone weathered smooth by centuries of storms, but its shadow stretched across the sand like a gift. Shelter Kara almost cried with relief as she stumbled into the ruins, dragging the alien with her. The temperature dropped just slightly in the shade, but it felt like a mercy from heaven. She lowered him gently against a wall, her arms shaking from the effort. For a moment she just leaned back and let herself breathe. Then she looked at him. The alien's skin was slick with sweat or something like it tanned. His wound had darkened, blood drying into the scales around it. Kara bit her lip, scanning the ruins for anything she could use. Her gaze fell on a strip of fabric caught on. A jagged stone, faded and brittle, but still strong enough. She tore it free, knelt beside him, and pressed it against the wound. The alien's body jerked, his hand flashing up to grab her wrist with surprising strength. Kara gasped, meeting his eyes. They burned with something she couldn't read: fear. Anger? Maybe both. For a long second, they stared at each other, her pulse racing. Then, slowly, his grip loosened. He let his hand fall back, his breathing harsh. Kara nodded quickly, swallowing the lump in her throat. "I'm trying to help," she whispered, even though she knew he didn't understand. She bound the wound as best she could, her hands trembling as she tied the cloth tight. The alien groaned, but didn't resist. When she was done, she sat back, wiping sweat from her brow, and leaned against the wall again. Silence settled over them, broken only by the dry whisper of wind against the ruins. Kara glanced at him again, studying his strange features. He wasn't. Like the aliens she had seen in old reports or propaganda images, his scales shimmered faintly, as if holding the memory of water. His eyes were deep and unblinking, not human, but not empty either. And in that moment, she felt something strange, like the desert itself had pulled them together for a reason. The alien's chest rose and fell more evenly now. His head turned slightly, his gaze flicking toward her. He said something, his voice low and harsh, filled with clicks and guttural tones. She shook her head quickly, holding up her hands. "I don't understand," she whispered. "I don't. I can't." His expression shifted, a faint crease forming across his strange brow. He tapped his chest with a clawed hand, weakly, but with intention. Then he said a word again, slower this time. Kara tilted her head, repeating it back softly, though it felt heavy and sharp on her tongue. The alien blinked. Then, almost painfully, he pointed at her with a trembling hand. He said another word clearly meant for her. Her throat went dry. Names. He was giving names. "Kara," she whispered, pressing a hand to her chest. "I'm Kara." The alien's eyes flickered. He tried to repeat it, his voice rasping. "Ka-ra." The sound was rough, broken, but it sent a shiver down her spine. For the first time since the crash, she felt like a bridge had been built between them, fragile. It's uncertain but real. A sudden vibration ran through the ground. Both of them froze. The stones around them rattled faintly, sand slipping down the ruins in thin streams. Kara's blood ran cold. She grabbed the alien's arm without thinking, her voice sharp. "It's coming back," she hissed, even though he couldn't understand. The alien's gaze snapped to the open desert beyond the ruin. His hand twitched toward the blade at his side, weak but ready. Kara's heart pounded. Whatever lurked beneath the sand hadn't forgotten them. It was circling, waiting, hunting. Kara pressed her back to the wall, her body trembling, whispered through clenched teeth, "We're in this together now." The alien turned his head, his dark eyes meeting hers in the fading light of the ruin. For the first time, she thought she saw something like agreement in them. The sand outside shifted again, slow and heavy, like a giant waiting just beneath the surface. The ruin trembled again, a faint vibration crawling up through the broken stones and into Kara's bones. She pressed her palm flat to the wall, feeling it shiver beneath her hand, her pulse matching the rhythm of the earth. It wasn't the wind. It wasn't a storm. Something massive was moving beneath the sand, and it was close. The alien stirred beside her, his chest rising and falling with shallow breaths. His hand drifted to the blade strapped to his side, the curved metal glinting faintly in the dim light. He was weak, his wound bound with nothing more than cloth and desperation. But his eyes were sharp now, focused on the open desert beyond the ruin. He knew what was coming just as much as she did. Kara leaned forward, peering through the jagged cracks in the ruin wall. The dunes stretched out in endless waves, golden and empty, yet the sand near the horizon shifted unnaturally. A line of disturbance, like a snake slithering just below the surface, moved steadily toward them. She held her breath, her body frozen. Then it stopped. The desert went still again, so quiet she could hear the faint rasp of the alien's breathing, and the frantic beat of her own heart. She waited, every muscle wound tight, her throat dry as ashdot. The silence shattered with a roar. Sand exploded upward in a violent spray. A geyser of dust and stone as something enormous burst from beneath the dunes. Kara flinched back, her arms raising to shield her face as shards of stone and grit rained down. She looked again, her stomach dropped. It was a beast unlike anything she had ever seen. Its body was long and armored, scales glistening under the sunlight like molten glass. A dozen limbs thrashed out from its sides, clawing at the sand to propel its massive form forward. Its head was a nightmare, a gaping maw, ringed with jagged teeth, each one dripping with saliva that sizzled when it hit the hot ground. Black, eyes empty and endless. Locked onto the ruins where they hid, the alien hissed something in his language, low and sharp, as he tried to push himself up against the wall. His body trembled, and Kara could see how badly he wanted to stand, to fight. But he was broken. His strength bled into the sand. Kara's mind raced. She had no weapon, no water, no chance of running. The beast was too fast, too powerful. If it came for them, the ruin wouldn't protect them. She bit her lip until she tasted blood, panic clawing at her chest. The creature slithered closer, its huge body dragging across the dunes, the ground trembling with each movement. Sand poured down in avalanches as it circled the ruins, its bulk, casting a shadow that swallowed the little shelter they had. It opened its maw again, its unleashing another roar that shook the crumbling stones. Kara ducked down instinctively, her body curling against the wall. The alien reached out suddenly, his clawed hand grabbing hers. His grip was weak but steady, his eyes boring into hers with an intensity that made her breath catch. He said something, another guttural phrase she couldn't understand, but she felt the meaning in his gaze together. Her fear didn't vanish, but it shifted, becoming something sharper. She was going to die here. She wasn't going to die alone. She glanced around the ruin desperately, searching for anything at all she could use. Her eyes caught on a chunk of jagged stone that had fallen from the ceiling. Not much, but more than nothing. She snatched it up, its edges rough and sharp, and tightened her grip. The beast reared back, its head lifting high above the ruins, saliva dripping from its jaws. Then it struck. The ground shook as its massive body slammed into the wall. Stone, exploding into shards. Kara screamed, ducking as debris rained down around her. The alien raised his blade, his arm trembling but defiant. The beast's head thrust through the broken wall, its maw opening wide, the stench of decay and heat pouring over them. Kara lunged forward without thinking. She jammed the jagged stone upward, ramming it into the soft flesh beneath one of the creature's black eyes. The beast shrieked, a sound so piercing it rattled her teeth, thrashing its head violently. Sand and dust swirled as its huge body slammed against the ruin again, tearing another wall apart. The alien seized the moment. With a ragged cry, he thrust his blade upward, stabbing deep into the beast's jaw as it reared back. Black blood sprayed across the ruins, sizzling when it hit the hot stone. The creature shrieked again, pulling back in a frenzy, its bulk twisting violently as it retreated into the dunes. Kara stumbled back, her lungs burning, her body shaking uncontrollably. She could barely process what had just happened. Her makeshift weapon was gone, lodged in the beast's head. The alien collapsed against the wall, his blade slick with black ichor, his chest heaving with ragged breaths. The dunes rippled again as the creature burrowed beneath the surface, disappearing into the endless sand. Laid for a long moment, there was nothing but silence. Kara's ears rang, her body trembling with adrenaline, her throat too dry to swallow. She turned to the alien slowly. He was pale if his kind could be pale, his scales dulled with exhaustion and blood loss. But his eyes met hers, steady and unblinking. He rasped something in his language, then repeated it more softly. Kara shook her head, breathless. "Don't understand," she whispered. The alien pointed to the sand, where the beast had vanished, then tapped his chest and hers. His meaning was clear enough. The thing beneath wasn't dead, would be back. Kara exhaled shakily, leaning her head back against the wall. Her body ached, her throat burned, but she wasn't broken, not yet. She looked at him again, this strange companion fate had thrown her into the desert with. "We're not done," she whispered, more to herself than to him. Outside, the desert stretched endless and merciless. But now Kara knew the truth. Planet wasn't just a wasteland. It was alive. And it wanted them both dead. The sun hung like a burning coin in the endless sky, its heat pressing down on Kara until her skin felt raw. The ruins that had shielded them were broken, the walls shattered by the beast's assault. Dust still clung to the air, thick and heavy. Scratching her throat with every breath, she leaned against a half-standing pillar, her chest heaving as she tried to gather herself. But the alien was already moving. He pressed his hand to his wound, his steps unsteady, yet his eyes burned with urgency. He made a sharp sound, pointing toward the open dunes. His voice carried the edge of command, not request. Kara frowned, her body screaming for rest, but then the ground gave a subtle, terrible shiver beneath her feet. She froze. Aliens. Gaze sharpened. He didn't need to explain. The monster was coming back. Her legs moved before her mind caught up. She followed him out into the blinding desert, the sand hot enough to sting through her boots. Each step was agony, her tongue swollen from thirst, her muscles tight with exhaustion, but the memory of that shriek, of black eyes and jagged teeth, drove her forward. The alien led, stumbling at times, but his stride never broke. He had a strange grace, even in weakness, moving with the instincts of a soldier. Kara kept glancing over her shoulder, her stomach twisting at every ripple of sand, every shift of shadow. The desert seemed alive with movement, the dunes whispering. Threats she couldn't see. Then the sound came, the grinding roar of stone and sand being torn apart from below. Kara's heart leapt to her throat. She screamed at the alien, though she knew he couldn't understand her words. It's coming. The dunes behind them erupted. Sand geysered upward, a plume of dust blotting out the sun as the beast surged to the surface again. Its body, larger than she had thought before, arched out of the desert like a serpent forged. Of armor and hunger, its shriek tore across the wasteland and the chase began. Kara's legs pumped with pure terror. The dunes shifted beneath her boots, making every step a battle. The alien glanced back, his face grim, then barked something at her and gestured sharply to the side. She didn't know what he said, but she followed, veering left as the beast slammed down where they had just been. The impact threw her to the ground, sand swallowing her hands and face. She coughed, spitting grit, and scrambled up as the alien pulled her arm, dragging her forward. The monster's shadow fell over them, its limbs digging into the dunes as it chased. Every second it closed the distance, its bulk cutting through the sand with impossible speed. Kara's lungs burned, her vision blurred, but still she ran. She didn't dare look back again. The alien led her toward a jagged ridge rising from the desert, stone blackened by centuries of sun. Sharp cliffs broke the monotony of sand, offering shelter or a dead end. Kara's chest tightened at the sight, but there was no choice. The beast was nearly upon them. They scrambled up the ridge, hands clawing at stone. The alien grunted with effort, his wound tearing open again, blood smearing the rocks beneath his grip. Kara grabbed his arm, pushing him upward with every ounce of strength she had left. Together, they reached the top, collapsing onto the rough surface just as the beast lunged, its massive jaws slammed shut on the cliff face, teeth raking across stone in a spray of sparks. Kara covered her head, the sound drilling into her ears. The alien dragged her backward, deeper onto the ridge. As the monster thrashed below, the beast roared again, slamming its body against the cliff. The ground shook, cracked spider webbing. Across the stone, Kara stumbled, nearly falling. Her heart hammered, panic threatening to swallow her whole. The ridge wouldn't hold. The alien grabbed her shoulders, forcing her to meet his eyes. His expression was fierce, steady, demanding she focus. He pointed up the ridge, toward a narrow passage twisting into the cliffs. A chance, maybe. They ran. Again, sand and stone crunching under their boots, the beasts smashing against the ridge behind them. Every impact shook the ground, each one closer to tearing their only refuge apart. Kara's legs trembled, her lungs raw, but she pushed herself harder. The passage closed around them, narrow and jagged, shadows cooling the burning air. The alien glanced back, his blade gripped tightly despite his trembling arm. Kara followed. His gaze and felt her stomach twist. The beast was trying to force its way into the canyon, its massive head wedging between the stone walls. Its jaws snapped wildly, teeth scraping sparks off the rock. But the stone was too tight for its full bulk. It shrieked in frustration, its limbs thrashing against the ridge, tearing great gouges in the dunes beyond. For now, it was stuck. Kara leaned against the stone, her whole body shaking. Sweat stung her eyes, her throat raw, but for the first time since the ruins fell apart, she could breathe. The alien sank to his knees, pressing a hand to his wound, his chest heaving. Yet his gaze remained locked on the beast, unblinking. He didn't relax, not even for a second. Kara followed his stare. The creature's black eyes glowed in the shadows, furious and unending. It wasn't gone. It wasn't beaten. It was waiting her. Relief curdled into dread. This desert wasn't just trying to kill them, it was hunting them. The canyon walls rose like broken teeth, jagged and towering, their shadows stretching across the sand as Kara and the alien pressed deeper inside. The sound of the beast outside still echoed, a guttural roar that vibrated through the stone, but its body could not follow them here. For now, the narrow walls shielded them. For now, Kara's chest still heaved from the run, every muscle burning, but her fear was sharper than the pain. She knew the monster would not give up. The alien moved slowly, one hand pressed against the wound in his side, the other gripping his strange blade. His eyes never stopped scanning the canyon, always alert, always searching. Kara followed him closely, afraid to fall behind, afraid of the silence. The air was cooler here, but it carried a strange weight, like the canyon was holding its breath. The longer they walked, the more the shadows deepened. The light above faded into slivers. Kara touched the walls as they passed, rough stone beneath her fingers. She felt markings, lines, grooves, patterns too straight to be natural. Her heart skipped. She leaned closer. They weren't cracks. They were carvings. The walls told a story. She could make out shapes of figures, tall and slender, fighting against massive beasts with jagged mouths. The scenes stretched for yards, old and worn, but still visible. Her stomach tightened as she recognized the monster they had just escaped. The alien noticed too. He paused, his hand brushing across the carvings, his face grave. He muttered something under his breath, low and heavy with meaning. Kara didn't need to understand the words to know what he was thinking. This thing had been here for a very long time, and it wasn't alone. A faint wind stirred, carrying a hollow sound through the canyon. Not the beast's roar, something else. A faint hum, almost mechanical. Kara froze, tilting her head. The alien lifted his blade, every muscle tense. They crept forward, the hum growing stronger, vibrating through the stone beneath their boots. The canyon opened suddenly into a wide, hollow chamber, its walls lined with broken columns and shattered stone. At the center stood something impossible, a structure half buried in sand and rock, metal glinting beneath centuries of dust. Its surface was alien, etched with strange symbols, glowing faintly with a blue-white light. It pulsed like a heartbeat. Kara's mouth went dry. A ship, not human. Not like the alien's small craft either. This was older, bigger, a relic from another age. She stepped closer without realizing, drawn to the light. Mum grew louder, almost alive. Her skin prickled, as if the air itself vibrated against her bones. The alien moved in front of her suddenly, blocking her path. He shook his head sharply, his voice hard with warning. She stopped, startled. His eyes were cold, serious. He didn't want her near it. But then the ground trembled again. Deep, distant vibration. Kara's stomach knotted as she looked back toward the canyon entrance. The monster was slamming against the walls again, trying to force its way inside. Stones rained down from the ceiling, dust choking the air. The alien looked at the buried ship, his jaw tight, then at the collapsing canyon. He said something sharp, pointing to the structure. His meaning was clear enough. If they stayed here, they would be crushed. Their only chance lay inside that relic. Kara shook her head, fear twisting in her chest. The thing pulsed like it was alive. She didn't trust it. But when another crash sent a crack splitting down the wall, she knew they had no choice. Beast was coming, and the canyon would not hold. The alien strode to the ship, pressing his hand against the glowing surface. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the symbols flared brighter, casting cold light across the chamber. The hum rose into a piercing tone, and the ground split as a section of the hull slid open with a hiss. A passage gaped in the stone. Alien looked back at her, his face set. Then he stepped inside. Kara's heart hammered. She hesitated only a second before following. The air inside was cooler, thick with the scent of metal and dust. The walls glowed faintly, lighting the corridor. In pale blue, it felt alive, like the ship was waking after a long sleep. Behind them, the canyon shook again, louder, closer. The beast's shriek tore through the stone. Kara flinched, but the alien pushed deeper into the ship, his blade ready. After him, her fear rising with every step, because in the silence of the relic, beneath the hum of its power, another sound stirred, soft, mechanical, like something moving inside. They weren't alone. The walls of the ship seemed to breathe with light veins of blue energy crawling across the metal like a living heartbeat. Kara followed close behind the alien, her steps echoing on the smooth floor as the hum deepened into a rhythm that pressed against her chest. She had never felt so small, so out of place, and yet something inside her whispered that they were. Standing inside the bones of something that was never meant to be found, the alien slowed, his eyes narrowing, his hand gripping the hilt of his strange blade tightly. The air here was heavier, filled with a charge that raised the fine hairs on Kara's arms. And then she heard it again, movement. Not just the distant rumble of stone outside or the beast's muffled howls. This was closer, sharper, scrape. Against metal, a shifting weight. Kara's breath hitched. Her heart pounded as she strained to listen. It was coming from the shadows ahead. The alien lifted his blade, the faint glow of the walls reflecting against its edge. They crept forward together, every sound amplified by the silence of the ship. The corridor widened into a chamber, vast and domed, its ceiling lost in darkness.
Oh.
In the center stood a pedestal of black stone, smooth and perfect, with lines of blue light pulsing across it. Above it hung a sphere, suspended in the air, turning slowly. As if gravity had forgotten it, the hum was coming from the sphere. It shifted and pulsed, its surface alive with symbols that Kara couldn't read, but that made her skin crawl. The alien froze, his face tightening, his posture rigid with recognition. Kara could see it in his eyes. He knew this thing, and he feared it. Then the sphere flared, bright and sudden, forcing Kara to shield her eyes. A voice filled the chamber. It's not a human voice, not a sound made by any throat, but a layered vibration that seemed to speak directly into their bones. The words bent and shifted, impossible to understand, yet their weight was clear. It was aware of them. Kara's knees weakened. She stumbled back, pressing against the cold wall. The alien stood firm, though his breathing grew heavier, his gaze locked on the sphere. The voice shifted, breaking into fragments of sound. Then, slowly it began to change. The vibration bent, reshaped, until the sounds became words. Not perfect, not smooth, but enough for Kara to understand. You are not of this place. The words echoed, heavy and slow, as though dragged from some ancient mind. She forced herself to speak, her voice cracking. Who are you? The sphere pulsed. Watcher of the sky. Keeper of silence. The alien stepped forward, his voice sharp, filled with tension. He spoke in his own language, low and fast, his words like a warning. The sphere answered, its tones harder, colder. Kara could feel the heat rising between them. The alien didn't just know this relic, he had been taught to fear it. The ground shook again, a violent tremor that sent dust cascading from the ceiling. The beast was close, forcing its way into the canyon chamber outside. Kara's heart raced as she looked back at the sealed door, hearing the distant crashes and roars. They had no time. The sphere pulsed brighter, its voice filling the chamber. Enemy comes. Choice. Now, Kara swallowed, her chest tight. Choice. The alien shouted something, his blade raised, his face fierce. He pointed to the sphere, his voice edged with rage. He didn't trust it. Maybe he knew what it was offering. But Kara felt the truth deep in her bones. This relic was no simple machine. It was a weapon built for wars long forgotten. Ground shook violently. The beast's roar thundered through the chamber, closer, louder, so loud that the walls themselves trembled. Stones rained down, the entire ship groaning like a living creature. The sphere pulsed again, its glow blinding. Now, take the power or fall. Kara stared at it, her breath ragged. She looked at the alien, his eyes fierce, his body tense, shaking his head in warning. She looked back at the sphere, its light spilling across her skin, burning like fire and cold all at once. And in that instant, the chamber erupted. The far wall split open with a deafening crash as the beast forced its massive head through. Its jagged mouth snapping, its eyes glowing with hunger, Kara screamed. The alien lunged forward, blade flashing. The sphere pulsed brighter than ever, and the hum became a scream of power. The chamber shook with light, with sound, with something older and deadlier than either of them could imagine. And Kara realized whatever choice she made here would not just decide if they survived, it would change everything.